A GOP strategist was recently speaking to Don Lemon on CNN, and she was making the argument that, you know, Obama seems to play the race card a little too much, and it's a little frustrating. Now, keep in mind that this happened on Monday, MLK Day, and her arguments seem a little questionable.
Alice, is the president playing the race card, as Palin suggests, or he's just stating the obvious?
Well, two more words on this. Stop it. Of course he's playing the race card, and the problem we have here is, especially on MLK Day of all days, is look how far we've come. We have not only elected the first African-American president, we've re-elected him. And the fact of the matter is, he's not, people don't dislike him because he is a black president. That has nothing to do with it. It's because he's a blind president. It's not about the pigment of his skin. It's about his policies, his job-killing policies, and the numbers that he really needs to be concerned with is the fact that 53% of Americans don't trust him.
Okay, Obama has never played the race card. Obama has never once said, my opponents dislike me, or conservative Republicans dislike me because I'm black. That has never come out of his mouth. Sarah Palin seems to, for some reason, think that he's said that in the past, or even implied it in the past. This strategist, Alice Stewart, seems to think it. But I think the most frustrating part about it is she refuses to acknowledge that, yes, there is a population of people out there that dislike Obama because he's a biracial president.
Right. It's actually crazy to say that because he was voted for once and then re-elected that there's no racism. That makes no sense. First off, we know that only about 40% of people vote in the first place. So you got 60% of people that could be racist just then and there. And of course, there's some percentage of people that won't vote for him because he's black. That doesn't mean you can't have legitimate policy. We complain about him all the time. You know, you can have legitimate policy issues with the guy, and that doesn't mean it's based in race. So she wants it to be in some perfect world where that is only it, but that's just not the world we live in.
Well, they will never, ever admit that. I think that that's something that they realize, that the Republicans and conservatives realize this is constantly lobbed upon them, and I think that there is justification for obviously that there is still racism, and there are segments of the population that will vote against him because he's black, but he also said there are some segments of the black population that will vote for him because he's black. So she wouldn't even acknowledge that part. You know, I think that for Obama, just being black is playing the race card for these people.
Absolutely. So let's take a look at the next video. She continues, and Mark Lamont Hill actually rebuts some of what she says, and I love it. Take a look.
Don't you think it would be disingenuous to think that all people who dislike the president dislike him because of his policies? I know black people who didn't like George Bush because he was white. That's the truth. You don't think there are white people who don't like the president because he's black?
I think the concerns people have and the reason people don't like President Obama is because of his policies. Nothing to do with the
Hold on. Alice,
go ahead, Mark.
But that wasn't the question. Alice, that wasn't the question. The question was, do you think there are any, not do you think that there are a majority? Because the point here is, first of all, 39% of white people voted for Obama. Most white people did not vote for Barack Obama, and I have no doubt that some of them did it on racial grounds. But let's be clear. President Obama also said that there are some black people who only support him or who give him the benefit of the doubt because he is black. So it's not as if Obama came out and said, white people are picking on me. He's saying that some people, black people and white people, vote along racial lines and support along racial lines. But one more thing here, and that is this whole race card thing. Just because you mention race doesn't mean you're playing the race card. Somehow the race card has become this thing to stop black people from talking about race. You can acknowledge racism, white supremacy without playing a race card.
I love what he says there, because it's absolutely true. And look, if right now everyone is making an argument based on absolutely no evidence, right? But we had a little bit of a mashup. Okay, let's see what some white people, some public figures have had to say about Obama in the past.
When you take a look at Colin Powell, you have to wonder whether that's an endorsement based on issues or whether he's got a slightly different reason for preferring President Obama.
You know, obviously Obama's going to come out in this case much more forcefully, and he's going to throw a lot of spears.
Barack Obama is a drug dealer of welfare.
Obama is the best food stamp president in American history.
Pick this president up, pat him on the head, and say, son, Mr. President, you were never ready to be president. Now go home. Work for somebody.
I think when you have somebody of your own race that you're proud of being president of the United States, I applaud Colin for standing with him.
Permanent dependency, in my judgment, of all these folks on the federal, somehow getting benefits.
I'm prepared, if the NAACP invites me, I'll go to their convention and talk about why the African American community should demand paychecks and not be satisfied with food stamps.
Let me just be candid. My party is full of racists. And the real reason a considerable portion of my party wants President Obama out of the White House has nothing to do with the content of his character, nothing to do with his competence as commander-in-chief and president, and everything to do with the color of his skin. And that's despicable.
Damn.
Lay it on the line.
You know, don't you think that if President Obama was playing the race card more, that black people would be benefiting more from his policies? Because almost every number that you see, that the income inequality between black and white people is actually getting worse.
Yep.
There's more unemployed black people than there were before President Obama took office. So if you're going to play the race card, at least we'd have some evidence of it being played. But actually, I don't see any evidence.
Obama has done nothing when it comes to certain disparities between black people and white people. And I think part of the reason why he hasn't done anything is because he's worried that he's going to get that criticism from the most right-wing opponents, right? So, for instance, you mentioned wealth inequality and income inequality.
Yeah.
That gap is definitely widening, right? And Obama hasn't done much to address it. Now, you can make an argument that it's because of, you know, his corporate donors and money in politics. That's definitely influencing him as well. But how often do you hear him addressing the African-American community or the black community in the United States, and how a disproportionate amount of them are imprisoned under our justice system, right, for doing the exact same activities that white people are doing? So marijuana use is one example that I throw out there. You know, so these are all issues that he has never addressed. And I think that it's problematic, and I think that he's worried about that criticism.
Yeah, and you know, I think you could also argue that when you have a certain ethnic group or religious group in your pocket, no matter what, you don't have to do anything for them. So it's true. I mean, it really is true. So, you know, something like 90% of black people voted for Obama. So in a weird way, he owes them nothing. Well, now he's not running for re-election, but in another way, if he knew going into the last election that they were going to vote for him in huge numbers regardless, well, then it shows why he didn't have to do much for them the first time around. I know that's a little cynical to look at it that way, but I think there's some truth to it.
I mean, it kind of reminds me of why Obama always comes to California just to raise money, and then he leaves. He never gives a speech. He never, you know, meets with the constituents here. And part of the reason why is because California is always going to vote for the Democratic candidate.
Yeah.
It's just the way it works.